Watch the Ash Variety channel on YouTube. Great Christian content, music videos, pro wrestling, movies, and more. AshVarietyChannel.com.
Hey everybody, Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. Great to be back with you. The blindness of doubt. That has been our lesson that we've been teaching now for several parts. We've been looking at this through the story of Thomas. Yes, that Thomas, doubting Thomas, good old doubting Thomas. But what we're finding is that story has a whole different meaning when we begin to look at it through our own eyes. And we realize, well, that could have been me. We realize that oftentimes that is me. But what changed? What happened in the context? What happened in the flowing, if you will, of this story? So Thomas was wrestling with this, right? And he pretty much had a demand, if we really want to use that word, because he said, if I don't touch the scar on his hand, if I don't touch the scar on his side, I'll never believe it. What was he saying he wouldn't believe? He didn't say he wouldn't believe in Jesus. That's not what he said. He said, I won't believe that he's back. That was what he was referencing, because the other guys had come to him and said, hey man, we've seen the Lord. And he was like, oh man, come on. Because he was overwrought with emotion. He was struggling with what had happened. Traumatic events in our life change the way that we see things, the way that we hear things, and honestly, the way we believe. Many people that I've known through this life, whether in ministry or before, have gone through a traumatic experience, the death of their mom or something, something horrifying, and it really impacted their belief in God. Really did. That's real. And so what we find here is, we left off yesterday, Jesus said to Thomas, don't be faithless. Because he had let him do exactly what Thomas had asked for. He met him in that place. He touched the scars in his hand and in his sides. He said, but don't be faithless. That again, meaning one without hope, one without vision, one without foresight, but believe. That's what we left off on yesterday, but believe. In other words, trust me. What we find in Thomas's response is that moment. You see, friends, when we shift gears, it's like going from park or neutral to drive. Things change. You're no longer sitting still. You're no longer inoperable. When we move, and I mean this with all my heart, when we move from religion to relationship, everything changes. Everything. Because religion is surface level stuff. Religion is all the do's and the don'ts and all the stuff that just completely turns people away, because either it's overwhelming and impossible, or it's annoying, because all you hear is the ugly and the depressive and all that. That's not what Jesus is all about. Are there consequences for actions? Sure there are. That's built in. Don't do this because that'll happen. If you fall down, you're going to get hurt. I mean, we could go down a tremendous list. Thomas, we find in his response in verse 28, he's in awe. He's overwhelmed. Because what did he want? He wanted this to be true. He wanted it to be true. That is where, when we move from religion to relationship, we begin to realize, wait a minute, it really is. And so Thomas responded. He said, my Lord and my God. Nothing is beyond you. I want you to think about that. We're going to look at those words for a moment. My Lord. That was Thomas saying with those two words, it's really you. The one that I'm surrendered to. It's really you. And my God, you really are who you say you are. I mean, there's nothing beyond you. There is nothing apart from you. We don't get that in religion. That is something personal. That is an entirely different place. And what we find is Thomas moving to a different place. It was a moment of conviction, but it was also a moment of transformation. In other words, okay, where I just was a few minutes ago, where I'll never believe this or that, this personal encounter with Jesus, I can tell you from my own experience, it will never leave you the same. Once you realize what it means, once you realize the reality of the story, once you realize where the intent of all of this really, really goes. See, Thomas, his doubt did not remove him from Jesus. Oftentimes we wrestle with that because we hear the messages and the sermons or whatever that just beat people to death. But that's not what Jesus did. And that is not what he taught. Thomas doubted because Thomas was real. He was struggling with a real question, with a real concern, something that he couldn't figure out. How many times have you had things in your life you couldn't figure out, and it caused you to wonder, am I wrong? Is this real? I mean, that's reality, friends. Thomas's doubt, what we find in the response that Jesus had to him, Thomas's doubt did not remove him from Jesus, but rather it opened a door that would lead him to a deeper place of commitment. What we find in this story is the powerful example of real life. You see, each and every one of us can relate to Thomas if we understand the story. And I hope that over these last several parts together that I've been able to do that I've been able to help you see this story very, very differently and understand, wait a minute, I got some work to do. But it's not over. Thomas gets a lot of heat because he had doubt. How many of you have struggled with that? I know I have. We all have. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. You needed more to get there. That statement applies to so many people. You needed more to get there. Remember being in school and the girl or the boy, whatever, sitting beside you, they got algebra on the first day and you didn't? Remember that? Maybe that was you. I know it was me. It was so frustrating to see the person next to you or in front of you, whatever, just whizzing through it, never a thing. Me, I'm sitting there going, what the heck does this even mean? What is a 3 times X? It made no sense to me whatsoever. Took a little more time, a little more attention from the teacher. Then you finally get it. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. You need a little more to get there. Friends, let me tell you something this morning, today, whatever time you're listening to this. God is not upset with you by your questions. And I'll give you a little secret. I give you a little insider information. And he's not upset with you by your doubt. You see, God knows the world that we live in, and he knows the power of skepticism. He knows where we are today. He allows us to see what we need to see. And He will meet us where we are. He will meet us in the middle of the storm if that is what is necessary. Just like our lesson many lessons ago, when Jesus is walking to them on the water, that was where their problem was. He met them there in the middle of that storm. But when He meets us there, He will give us only every reason to not just believe, but He will give us the ability to grow in that belief. You see, He'll give us the opportunity. He'll meet us in the situation, but He won't allow us to just stay there. It's kind of like planting seeds. We can plant the seeds in the ground, but we water them and fertilize them and take care of them so they grow and produce something. He tells Thomas, you saw and believed. But then He would go on and say one last thing. He would say, but blessed are those who have not seen and believed. In other words, God said it. I believe it. That settles it. Is that an easy place to get to? Not always. Not always. A lot of times we struggle with that if we're honest. But I can tell you this, and we're going to wrap things up today with this particular study. The more that you pursue a deeper relationship with Christ, the easier it is to not just believe, but believe and walk away fully trusting Him that He's got it. Friends, let me close with this. You can bring it to Him. You can bring it all to Him. Your burdens, your doubts, your fears, your worries, your questions, your hurt, your anger, your brokenness. And you can learn to believe and not be faithless. Thomas, as I said, has often been called Doubting Thomas. That's kind of a moniker that's been hung on him. But we read here, and this is what's beautiful, he didn't stay that way. He didn't stay that way. See, friends, our faith becomes personal when we get serious with Jesus. It changes who we are. It changes how we react. It changes how we think. It changes how we live. And it changes who He becomes to us. Thomas said, my Lord and my God. Can you say that today? God bless you. Thank you for joining me for Making It Simple, the blindness of doubt. This is our final lesson in this teaching. Lord willing, we'll start something brand new tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day.